Hello planty people, welcome back to my channel. I am Empress and this is Plant Tips with Empress. Now today I am moving a video ahead a few slots because it's a video that I think a lot of people need, because I keep hearing that this plant is a bit infamous and is giving people a lot of trouble. So today we're going to be talking about string of pearls. Now, when I first started in plants, I didn't like string of pearls very much. I don't know what I didn't like about them. For some reason, I just didn't get them. And then a few people gave me a couple of cuttings, and I got a couple of more cuttings, and then I kept getting them given to me. And suddenly I had 4. And they're all just kind of going a bit wild for me at the moment. And it's winter. They're not even meant to be growing much at the moment. So I thought I'd do a little video with my #1 tips and tricks for a string of pearls succulent and how to get them to stay happy and healthy. I promise you can learn how to not kill them. Everyone's like, they're impossible. I kill them all the time. Oh my God, I've killed 7 of them. They're impossible. I can't have them. I promise you can. You can. We can do it. We can do it together. You, me, and Fox. All right? Now let's get into it. So I'm going to be covering a couple of topics here today. I'm going to put some timestamps up on the screen right here. Here they are. Look at them appearing beautifully right before your eyes. I'm going to put some timestamps up with the topics I'm covering so that if you don't want to watch the whole video, or you're coming back to this and you're like, oh, I just needed that tip on what is the perfect amount of water. Well, I'm going to put the timestamps. They're still going to be here floating magically. Well, those timestamps mean that you can go jump ahead into the video as to where you need to be. So the thing about string of pearls is if you get their conditions right, they will thrive. If you just give them those right conditions, then they will just go off on their own accord and you will get a big full plant in no time. I have grown all of these from cuttings that were really, really small, and this one I purchased as a really tiny plant. And this is a few months. Maybe this one's about 6 months. This one's probably a little bit older, but it was like a 2 tiny string cutting. Yeah, so it happens quickly. So once you get those conditions correct, they will just love you. So the first topic I'm going to be covering today is soil mix. So the correct soil mix for your string of pearls is extremely important. Once you get them in the right soil mix, they will be super duper happy. Now, of course, there are lots of different types of soil mixes that can be really good for your pearls. This is my preference. Of course, there are going to be other people who have different preferences, and none of them are wrong. They're all just different. There's lots of different ways to do this and lots of different ways to grow plants, and that's what we're about, is learning, growing like our plants. So, my personal preference soil mix for my string of pearls is this. So I've pre-mixed a batch of it here, and then I've got my kind of key ingredients here as well to show you. So in here, I have a mix of my favorite succulent mix, which will be in my soil video. If you want to know what it is, let me know. It's an Australian brand. It's a little bit hard to find, but I personally prefer it to a lot of other brands. In it, it has quite a high kind of pebble ratio. It's got a lot of sort of stones in it, which makes me very happy because it means it doesn't have as much kind of heavy chunks of tree bark and organic matter, which your string of pearls do not like a super organic-y soil because it just holds way too much moisture. So in there I also have some horticultural sand. So this is, you know, plant-safe sand that you get at your garden store or your hardware store. And then I have our trusty perlite. Remember to be careful when handling perlite. Perlite, the little shards of perlite to breathe in are quite dangerous. So make sure that you are very careful when you're pouring your perlite, mixing your perlite, and handling your perlite. Anyway, so in my soil mix here for my string of pearls, I have about an even mix of the 3. So it's about 1 part of the cacti soil, 1 part of the sand, and 1 part perlite. So you can see that it's very sand heavy. You can see the perlite is very, prominent in there. And you can see that, it's a very it's going to have a lot of drainage. That's important. Drainage in your soil is super important when it comes to your string of pearls. If they're getting waterlogged at all, if there's any kind of water, getting way too much water buildup in your soil, you're going to end up with problems. So next topic is lighting requirements. Now, your pearls, they love the sun. String of pearls are originally a succulent from the areas of Africa. So, as you can imagine, it likes it hot, it likes it dry, it likes lots of light. So they do love anywhere from full morning sun to medium to full afternoon sun, depending on how hot it is. So mine can handle afternoon sun, but if it's summer, I won't give them really, really, really direct afternoon sun. So this hangs in a window that gets medium to dappled afternoon sun because of a tree outside the window, and it is in a lovely hanging basket that hangs against the window frame. One thing that's important to think about when it comes to lighting with your string of pearls is if you want bigger, fatter, fuller pearls, like you can see here on the top of my plant, then you want to give it more sun. And if you're getting a lot of sort of longer, thinner strings like I have at the base here, then your plant is needing a little bit more sun because it's getting small pearls again. So what is happening here is my plant is on a bathroom windowsill, and in summer this bathroom windowsill gets heaps of sun, but now that it's winter it's not getting as much sun. So all of this is the growth from the start of the year when it had a lot more sun. So I've got some big beautiful full pearls up here that were from the start of the year, and as the year's gone on and the lighting has gotten less and less and we've gone into winter lighting, I have these long kind of thin tendrils. So this baby needs a little bit more sun, and it will get its big, full, fat peas again from having more sun. The great thing is with their lighting is pearls can live outside. So I have a little baby one here in this basket of hanging things, and it gets full morning sun until about 11, and then the sun goes over my house and it doesn't get sun again for the rest of the day, but it does get bright indirect light. So your pearls can handle being outside as well. They can handle that bright and direct sun if you want them to. So the main thing to remember about lighting is give them lots and lots of sun. They love it bright, they love it hot. And if you start to see your pearls get a little bit spindly and get these big gaps between your strings and your pearls get quite small, then you need more sun on that baby. So next I'm going to talk about watering. So there's a lot of debate in Facebook forums about watering. I am going to say, for me personally, as I say with everything, this is my experience, it doesn't matter which way you water. You can top water, you can bottom water, you can, as some people say, butt chug, which is just a fun way of saying bottom watering. You can do any of those methods. The main thing is don't do it when they don't want it, and only water them just a little tiny bit, and then like less than that. So I've got a couple of different ones here that I have I actually left a couple of them to desperately need a water just so that I can show you peeps on this video. So this one here does not need a water right now. This one needs a water, this one needs a water, and that one needs a little water. So I've got them over this plate here because I'm going to show you just how much drainage I have in these pots and these plants. So this one, I always top water them just because I do, because I go around and I top water all my plants. So this has I'm going to try and lift it up here without, it's got a big drainage hole in the bottom. I have 2 large river rocks just kind of wedged over here just to stop all of the soil from falling straight out of the bottom because it is such a massive hole on the bottom of this pot. It's a bit silly. So with this one, I always top water it, but I wait until... Now you can see it on these 2 plants. I'm going to bring them up close to the camera so you can see. But you can see here, I have pearls kind of shriveling up. Kind of shriveling here. And then I'll show you on this other one as well. So we have some shriveled pearl here and here and over here and there as well. So what happens when the pearls are shriveling up is that means that, girl, they be really, really, really thirsty. So the thing about pearls is they are little water sacs. So each little pearl is a little water storage unit, and it's kind of like, it's like a little planty camel. It's a little plant camel. And each of these pearls hold water. So when they are glossy, see how these are shiny, and they look really full and like lush and happy. This is my variegated string of pearls. You can see how full and lush and shiny they are. This does not need water. This does not need water. Don't water it. So when they look like this, leave it alone. Don't water it. But you can see how these ones look a little bit dull. They're not as shiny. And they've started to shrivel. What that is that's that plant telling you, I'm ready for a big drink. Please give me a big drink. Personally, I don't even water my pearls until they start to look like this. When I start to see that shine dull, and when I start to see them start to just cave in on themselves just a little bit, that's where I get my slow pour, tiny spout watering can, and I will give them a really quick run around. And that's it. I don't over soak them. And what you can see is that's already poured straight out. That's how much drainage. You can see all the sand and all the perlite. That's how much drainage is in this pot. You can see the water I just poured through is dripping straight out. That's good. That's what we want. You can always add more later. It's much harder to take all of the soil out of the pot. I have another video on that. It's in the comments if you need to find that one, if you do accidentally overwater it. But you don't want much in there. You just want it to pour straight through. And that's it. So that's watered now. I will check on that in 2 days. Make sure those pearls are starting to gloss back up and swell back up. And if they're not, if they're still looking the same, I will give it the same amount of water again. But that is now officially watered. This one, I'm going to do the same thing. Now, I always top water them. If you want to bottom water them, I'll show you what bottom watering them is, if that's your preference. So that's it. And then, see, we've already got the water dropping out at the bottom. I'm not sure if that's showing up on the camera. Probably not. But there is water already pouring out. Like, dripping out the bottom right there. So that is gone straight through. Straight through. Like, bad takeaway. It's just gone straight through it. So I'm going to give it a tiny little bit more. And I'm really just giving it a few mil of water here. I'm not giving it much at all. And that's dripping all straight out the bottom. Now, if you don't know what bottom watering is, I will show bottom watering with this little one here, which also needs a little water, which is just so cute and is probably way too big for this pot, but it's fine. It's fine. So if you're scared of top watering it and you're worried you're going to drown it, you can bottom water it. So what bottom watering is is as it sounds, you're watering it from the bottom. So you want to put in a little bit of water in there. Not very much. Let's get her off here so she doesn't soak any up. And then you're just popping that pot in there. And then you leave this for 15 minutes to half an hour try not to leave it any longer than that because it will absorb all of that water, and that's going to be too much for a string of pearls. In summer, you want to water these a lot more. In summer, you can really kind of go for it with your watering just that little bit harder because they can get thirsty in summer. But I like to wait for the plant to tell me. I find that eventually, after you kind of had them for a little while, it's pretty easy to look at them and go, yep, this is what I want it to look like. These lush, happy, full pearls, this is where it's at. If they look like this, they're thirsty. So with your bottom watering, you can put that in there and leave it and walk away, come back in 15 minutes to half an hour, and then you just take that out. Imagine 15 minutes to half an hour has passed. So I've come back and I'm taking this out of here, and then you won't have much water left in the bottom, and then you let it drip dry and you put it back to where it belongs. Now when it comes to feeding your string of pearls, I'm just going to throw it in with the watering section because I feed when I water. I use either a soluble cacti succulent mix in my watering can, or I use an indoor plant specific fertilizer in my watering can. These like to be fed when they're thriving and growing, so I'll give them a little bit of food once a month or so in winter, once every 2 months in winter sometimes, and then, I try to go for every 2 to 3 weeks in summer if I remember, because they really are bigger growers in summer. They can grow all year round. I haven't found them to have much of a set dormancy time because, it is winter, and you can see this growth is brand new of the last few days, and, I've got new growth in all of my pots here. So, they do grow all year round. You just got to make sure that you give them the right conditions. Now, watering with overwatering, it happens a lot, and I get it. You want to love your plant. I do. I'm a chronic overwaterer. I feel you so hard. If you overwater these, I suggest you repot them right away. Get them into some dry soil and then don't water them again for a while. So by dry soil, I mean soil that is like, this or drier, and it will absorb moisture out of that soil for a little while, and you just want it in there, maybe the tiniest drop of water, and I'm talking like the tiniest drop of water, and you might be okay. But if you've overwatered it, take it out, check it, make sure you've got no root rot. Root rot is where your roots have gone brown and mushy. If that's happened, cut all your rotten roots off, and then go to my propagating section about string of pearls later on, and we will talk about how to save your last little pieces. But yeah, so it's as a rule, it's better to underwater these than it is to overwater them. If you're really worried about overwatering them, get yourself a moisture meter. Moisture meters are, $15 to $20 on eBay, and you just stick it in. Actually, I will go grab it. So this is my moisture meter. It is set to moisture. And I'm just going to carefully put it into this one here. And what you can see is it is bone dry in there. It is the driest of dries into that pot, and that's all the way into the bottom, and it is super healthy. So, having it super dry is okay. So if you're worried about moisture meter, if you're worried about watering and moisture, get yourself a moisture meter. They are such a joy. I love them. They're so handy. But you know what? It really is a plant that you can learn to spot the signs. So you can see them just here, sitting right next to each other. We have shiny, full, happy fat pearls. We have dull, starting to shrivel pearls that are going, please, please, give me a big drink. Give me a big drink. And these ones here are the same. All right, let's move on. Now, I just wanted to add to the watering section that these guys do love a bit of humidity. I have this one in the bathroom, and this one lives near the humidifier, and they really love it. This one doesn't live in a humid room at all, and it's still thriving. So, if you have a bit of humidity around, just make sure you are watering a little bit less. You will not need to water as much as one that lives in a super dry room. Like, that's probably a bit obvious, but I like to just say it just in case, because sometimes things feel obvious when you hear them, but you just go, oh, there's so many pieces of information I'm trying to cram into my brain that, I just like to say it. So yeah, they can go up to, this lives in 80%, 70 to 80% humidity. This one lives over the humidifier, which is churning out 60% humidity at 12 hours a day. And then this one lives on the bedroom windowsill, which probably doesn't have much humidity, but would have a little bit at night. And it's doing fine. And then this one lives outside on my front porch, and I live at quite a dry city. So, that shows you that they thrive in all kinds of conditions, but they don't mind a bit of humidity. But if you do have them in a bit of humidity, just adjust your watering schedule accordingly. Next, we're going to talk about pots and planters and what you should be planting your string of pearls in. Now, as you can see here, I don't have a preference. However, I can very strongly suggest drainage is key. So I have it in this ceramic pot here, but as you can see, the pot is massive compared to the actual catcher. So I have the pearls living in this. There are so many drainage holes stabbed in the bottom of that plastic catcher, and then all that water is so far away from it that it is no chance of that pot soaking up any excess water when I water it. So I don't ever have to worry about the plant absorbing too much water because it's all going into the bottom of this. And unless I'm flooding that, it is not getting to a point where it's reaching it. So I let it drain through, and then it catches in the bottom. And then I just, pour it down the sink, and then I just pop it back in. And that hangs in a macrame hanger that I made. But that's in plastic, and it's perfectly happy. These two are both in plastic, and they're perfectly happy. And this one's in ceramic, which is a glazed ceramic. But if you are a chronic overwaterer, or you're really, really worried about overwatering them, or in the past, that's the reason you've accidentally killed your string of pearls, I would suggest jump straight to terracotta. So terracotta actually absorbs the moisture out. It can, so be careful putting it on any wooden tables. It can leave water rings on your wood, so don't do that. But if you jump straight to terracotta will absorb a lot of that moisture out. So if you're really scared about overwatering, ceramic does that a little bit as well, and plastic will keep more moisture in. So, if you're a bit concerned and you're a bit worried, maybe avoid plastic, put them in a terracotta pot with well-draining holes. Just make sure that if you're not going to do that, you just make sure you're not watering it too much. So, the plastic pot's going to hold a little bit more moisture. So when I water these ones, I don't water them nearly as much as I'll water this one. And this one does need watering more often. So, that's something to consider. Make sure that you've got lots of drainage so that when you do water it, that water pours straight through like it did just before in the watering segment. You really want to make sure drainage. I can't stress that enough. It is so important. Like, the drainage in this is so good. It's still, leaking water onto my bench. You can see, drainage. Drainage, babe. Drainage. Another thing I've noticed with potting up these babies, besides wanting lots and lots of drainage and using ceramic or terracotta if you're a little bit worried about overwatering, is they love to be root bound. They love to be squished into a pot that's a bit too small for them. They really do. I have just noticed that more and more with these I really noticed it after this one thrived so much being in such a tiny little pot. I actually repotted this variegated string of pearls that I have here. If the camera would like to focus, thank you. I repotted that from a pot that was probably the next size up. It was probably, about there. And I repotted that into a size down because I just felt like it was in too big a pot. I just felt like it wasn't crowded enough. I know it seems weird. Usually we don't want our plants crowded into the pot. But this one, since I've repotted it into this smaller pot, it has all of this new growth, all of here, these pure white pearls in here. I don't know how well the camera is going to catch that. they look like perlite, but it's not. They're beautiful, perfectly white. There's one pure white little pearl in there. Yeah, so I repotted this into a smaller pot, and it has just done so well. So I really do not suggest overpotting these. You really want to keep them in a root bound. You want to keep them in a pot that's a bit too small, because that really helps with that drainage. The more soil you have in there, the more chance that the soil is going to hold too much water and just, it's going to waterlog, like I said in the soil bit. So a combination of a small pot with lots of drainage and then high draining soil is just ideal. Okay, so the next segment we're talking about is everyone's least favorite segment when it comes to any plants, and that is pest control. So I have the world's biggest hate for mealybugs. Now, string of varieties, string of pearls, string of hearts, string of anything varieties seem to be really loved by mealybugs, and spider mites, and they're not so much a fungus gnat problem if you're watering correctly. If you're not overwatering these guys, fungus gnats is not a problem you're going to have quite so much of with your string of pearls varieties. So, if you're overwatering, that's where you get fungus gnats. But if you're watering correctly with these and only watering when they need them, the pest problem you're most likely going to end up with is mealybugs. Now, this one was these long hanging tendrils, and I had it hanging up high, close to my ceiling, and I didn't kind of check the top for a little while. And then I climbed up and checked it. And my whole strings had been eaten out by mealybugs. And I had these little white webs, and I had these stringy, horrible sticks of pearls. And on the ends, it still looked relatively healthy. And then the top was so broken and sad. So my personal experience with mealybugs is I had no luck with things like neem oil and pest oils. I didn't find them to work for me. I tried isopropyl alcohol, and I had some luck with isopropyl alcohol, which was about, I think I did a 70% to 30% water mix. But since then, I've actually had a lot more luck with hydrogen peroxide. Now, I learned from hydrogen peroxide from a bunch of other YouTube plant people, so I do not claim any of this knowledge at all. This is knowledge that I have learnt from other people. I ordered this online, but you can get it at the chemist and at the supermarket. It's kind of in the section with the Band-Aids, the plasters and wound cleaning and, things that you'd use, like the Dettol and the things like that. So it's in that section. If you're getting 6%, you want to water it down quite a lot. If you're getting 3%, you need to do it about half and half. And then you want to use a cotton bud, and you kind of dip it in your solution, and then you get kind of right up in between your pearls and you cotton bud it off. If there are any that have any major sections, you can just pull those pearls off and chuck them. Sometimes it's so much easier to just get rid of some problematic pearls than trying to get the mealybugs out of the gaps between them. So, sometimes just you can strip the string a little bit, you can throw those out, and it will recover okay. It's all right. So what I did with mine is I chopped off all the gross bits, and then I've just wrapped my pearls around the top here, helping it kind of stabilize and kind of get its legs back after the mealybugs ate them all off. So if you're having a problem with pests, look into what might work best for you, but there's a couple of options. I would suggest going for the isopropyl or for the hydrogen peroxide for mealybugs, and isolate your plant for 4 weeks. It can be a while if they're all gone. I've moved some plants back thinking that their quarantine time is over, and it turns out that I was wrong. I was so wrong. And I then infested other plants with mealybugs again. So, if you need to quarantine a plant, quarantine it just a little bit longer than you think, and really be vigilant with your checking. And if you see even the slightest hint of another bug, get in there with another cotton bud. You can put it in a spray bottle as well, in a watered down spray bottle, and give it a spritz. But be careful spritzing your string of pearls, because you could accidentally overwater it. Using a cotton bud and a dipping method is a lot safer because you're not going to accidentally waterlog your soil. Propagating a string of pearls. So propagation of a string of pearls is actually pretty easy. There's a couple of ways you can do it. You can either do it in water propagation or you can do soil propagation. I have done both, and this plant was actually grown from water propagation, and this little baby here is grown from stem propagation onto soil. So the two ways to do it that I prefer is, so if you're doing a water propagation, I'm just gonna grab a little example here. So if you were doing a water propagation, you'd get your vessel of water. I like to use a rooting hormone. So this is a rooting hormone powder that's from the hardware store. And what I would do is I would get a pair of sharp, clean scissors or a razor blade, and I would cut it with quite a few string on there. You don't want to cut a short piece. You want a nice long string. If I was doing this, I would probably cut up to here where this seam is, so I would have this big long string or this big long string. Then what you want to do is, if you're propagating it in water, you want to pull off, if I was cutting it here, I would pull off all of the strings from there to there. So I would pull off all of all of the pearls from there to there. So I would pull 1, 2, 3, these pearls off here. And then you let your cutting dry for a day or two. You really want to leave it to dry out. You don't want to dunk it straight in water. And then I like to dip it in a little bit of rooting powder and then put it in my water propagation. And then it will water propagate, changing the water twice a week, once a week. When you remember, put it near the kitchen sink or the bathroom sink so you look at it a few times a day. Changing that quite regularly is always a good idea. And then in 4 weeks, approximately 4 weeks, sometimes less, sometimes more, you'll end up with roots growing out of the noddy areas that you pulled off those peas from. So if you leave them on and then dunk them in your water, you're going to end up with these pearls that are in the water, touching the water, rotting, and then that's just going to lead to your whole cutting rotting, and then, it's not viable, so what's the point? So if you want to do it in water propagation, get yourself a nice long cutting, remove the pearls that are going to be in water, make sure you leave some on, so you want to take off about half the pearls, so that you've got stem, and then leave half the pearls on, and then make sure that your remaining pearls are not touching the water, otherwise it will rot. Now if you want to do it in dry propagation, so that's in soil, the best way to do that is you get your string of cutting, and you just spiral it around the top, and then I've done it in here, you can see. I like to pin it down with a little bit of wire. And what that does is it will encourage it to grow roots from that spot down. And I've done it in here, but I don't know if you can see the wire because it's all kind of buried at the moment. But what that's going to do is it's going to grow roots from the places it's pinned, and then it's going to start growing strings up and out from there, which you can kind of see it started to do here. So if you're looking at your string of pearls and then you look at photos on Instagram and go, how do they get them so full and beautiful? This is part of how. So you take a couple of those strings, spin them around, and then pin them down, and you're going to end up with many more tendrils coming from those places that you've pinned it. So that's one of my favorite ways to propagate. So when it starts to get really long, I like to spin some of its hair back up and pin it down, and then eventually you end up, so I've done that a couple of times with this one, and you end up with this nice full bunch up the top, and then it starts to, trail down beautifully. This one definitely needs more sun though, because, bathroom winter light is not the same as summer winter light, but she's doing all right. So that's my video on string of pearls. They are my favorite tips and tricks. I hope they help you. If you still feel stuck, please put some comments in the bottom and I will do my best to help. But a little bit of troubleshooting. If you are noticing your pearls are shriveled, then they need more water. If your pearls are mushy, they are getting too much water and you need to repot and stop watering ASAP. Put them in a new soil mix, lots and lots of drainage, let it dry right out again. If you need to, propagate some of those stems and save it that way. And then if your pearls are getting leggy and little and you're wondering what happened to your big fat juicy babies, it needs more sun. So I hope that helps you. I really do, because they're a really rewarding, fun plant when you get them to work for you. I hope it helps. If you enjoyed my channel, please like and subscribe and, share and do all those things. And if you don't, then why'd you watch this much? I'm Empress Erie. Thanks for watching Plants Tips with Empress, and I will be back soon with another video.